Hi, welcome to Tea Time with Rock. We have Chef Royalty here, Jared. He is a high-end culinary and he's going to share some tips and tricks. And so we would love to hear a little bit about his story and just how he came to be. Just like, what's your background, Jared, that you have so far?
Um, it depends how far back you want to go, but as far as chef stuff goes, we've been doing this for about 10 years. Started back, I was a so basically a little bit about us. I'm a private chef in Colorado. We do infused dining experiences and cooking classes with cannabis for people in the Denver and Colorado area. And started about 10 years ago. It started out as a New Year's Eve party for some friends, and we decided to infuse a bunch of dishes. So we infused like prime rib, mac and cheese, all these different things, like herb crusted the prime rib with like cannabis herbs, like flour, that kind of stuff. And it was a really big hit. And then after that, we started like dwelling it or like trying to figure out how we could continue this or go down that path. And it's about the same time Bong Appétit was popular on TV, and High Times had a top cannabis chef contest. So when I entered that in Las Vegas, we ended up winning. And after that, I started working, closely with cannabis tours here in Colorado and teaching cooking classes, and kind of snowballed from there. I'll tell you some more if you want to hear the whole thing.
Whatever you want to say. It's just like so exciting to see how it came to be, how it was just like
For
you and your
sure.
friends and stuff like that. I was like, I love how it's so organic, how you kind of came into the industry just super organic, just like I want to have a fun time with my friends, and now you're like helping people and how does that like if you want to tell me more about your story, how does that make you feel? How's that going?
It's awesome. Yeah, I don't consider myself an inspiration, but a lot of people throughout my life, I say I've inspired them in different ways, from like quitting jobs and starting my own businesses to different things like that. And so like as far as the like being a cannabis chef, I've been in the cannabis industry before that too. We actually were making like hash products in Florida, like way back in the day, and we decided it was really good product. So we entered into a competition in Los Angeles called the Secret Cup, where we ended up taking first place, and we're offered a job here in Colorado. That's how I got out here. And yeah, that's kind of been it since then. So that's how we got the royalty name, was through that, royalty extracts. And since then, we've had a couple different businesses, be it royalty shop where we make like hat pins and other cool things, to
Wow.
chef royalty and dine with royalty as it is today.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's so cool. Like, yeah, I was doing some background stuff on you, and I was like, oh, that's so awesome that you won so like your awards is like, was that like your aha moment when you realized cannabis could be a sophisticated culinary tool rather than just a brownie mix?
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. Like when I first started seeing like Bong Appetit and different people using it for savory items and stuff like that, and like dinner experiences, that kind of like put a light bulb in my head, and really interested me. And so when I like me and my wife took a cooking class, probably 12 years ago, and since then, I was like, oh, there's something here. It's like cooking is a thing. Like I'm interested in this. There's like more to it that I didn't know. And so I didn't start doing that until my 30s, believe it or not. So you never know like when you're gonna find that path that takes you down the right one. Um, but yeah, it's been a hell of a ride with it for sure.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So it's like, I just love how you and your wife are taking it, and then next thing you know, you're here trying to like help other people. Like it's just like the Dine with Royalty, like you mentioned earlier, with other jobs that you had prior, where you got the royalty and stuff like that. It's like, how do you balance the luxury of fine dining with the medicine of cannabis?
So yeah, for sure. So what we do, how we do it is we do a tableside infusion for guests. So basically, the focus is on the food and the flavor of the food. We get a lot of guests who aren't interested in cannabis at all. We're definitely popular on both platforms, traditional and cannabis cuisine. So the focus is the food. But with that said, a lot of chefs out there who work with cannabis have been chefs first and then got into cannabis, whereas I grew up on cannabis and became a chef like later in life. So I kind of have a different background than most of them in that kind of fun sense. And I bring like a whole heavy user
Yeah, like
interest to it as well. So, but yeah,
what is
where exactly was I going? I'm sorry.
yeah, like what is your background of like cannabis? Like did you grow up with it, or like when did you start using it and stuff like that?
So I started later than some people, still early to some, probably like 16, 17 years old. Uh, I was I grew up around cannabis a lot because I had people in my family who were growing it back in the day illegally, and they've done their time now for that. And basically, so I had like my dad never wanted me to be in cannabis because he had a rough life with it. So to turn around now and like we could laugh about it now that I'm successful in multiple portions of the cannabis industry, it's kind of crazy in our two lifetimes to see the full on change from totally illegal to the way it is now, where in Colorado we can grow plants in our home.
Yeah, no, definitely a full circle moment. I think when it stems from racism with cannabis and then now having that stigma, being able to talk about it, having an open conversation with people and not being afraid of it, like yourself, it's like you have that background knowledge of like, hey, like my dad did this and it was very frowned upon. And then now that you're in the industry and you're able to be successful and stuff like that. And future people that want to be in the industry, there's so many different ways you can be in it now, but back then it was very frowned upon and very just like you would just get in trouble
For
for it.
sure. Yeah, like full circle moment. My dad even moved to Colorado for like a year, and we grew together for a little bit. So it's kind of crazy.
It's like you were like, who would have thought? Not me. Like, and it's like
Right,
you have
exactly.
those moments and stuff like that. That's so cool. Okay,
No,
so
I appreciate you. Thank you.
yeah, no, of course. And so I'm going to kind of go back a little bit about the culinary insight, the science of the infusion that you have. And so, like, this is going to be like the temperature control, stuff like that. So, we know
Sure.
that terpenes and cannabinoids are sensitive to heat. So, what is like your golden rule for the temperature to ensure you don't burn off the potency or ruin the flavor profile? What's
So a
your
lot of times with infusions, like what you hear about is decarboxylation, where it's kind of like a blanket thing where like it's basically focused on activating all the THCA and the THC, so you're getting all of the full effects of the psychoactive THC. But when you're doing that, like if you were to do decarbing on paper, like the way it is, like you are going to cook off a lot of terpenes and stuff like that. So the people that like when people have edibles, usually what they're experiencing, except for like recently, which we could talk about, was like high THC edibles. So you're wasn't really a sativa edible and an indica edible. It was more of just like high THC edibles, which basically was kind of indica-ish, so or the way that people would feel like with those terpenes that represent indica. But um yeah, exactly. I forgot exactly where I was going with that. I'm sorry. I'd be doing that sometimes. But what was the exact question so I can hit back on it? Because I kind of swayed a little bit there.
It's okay. I loved it. I loved it. It was, I was just more
The
so like
temperature.
the temperature, you don't burn
Right.
off
Yeah. So what
the.
I wanted to say is this. Thank you. What I want to say is this. Like, so what there's something called like craft infusions, which I've kind of come up with myself, where you kind of decarb it to a point, like maybe not fully decarbing it. This is not something I do often, but something that just putting it out there for people who are interested in it. But basically, like let's say you decarb it to a point, like maybe you're not activating all the THC, but you're leaving it to where some terpenes are still existing, so you're getting kind of more of a full cannabinoid experience instead of just going for activating all the THC, which is kind of something that you don't see in edibles that are on the market. But with new products like rosin, edibles, and stuff like that, we are seeing more strain dependent edibles, but maybe those ones specific, like the rosin ones specifically, maybe they are missing some of the terpenes in them, depending on how they're using it in their processes. But then there's products like CO2 oil and RSO, which are made and have all the cannabinoids and terpenes back in them um, already, with it already fully active. And those are cannabinoids from actual cannabis products, as opposed to ones added like distillates and stuff like that from other plants and things of that nature. So I think that those products are really interesting as well too for edibles, because you can get quote unquote like craft infusion type infusion with those products.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
And
Yeah.
then to touch on, and then Jennifer, just to answer your question one more step, you were asking about temperatures and stuff like that. 220 degrees Fahrenheit is a fair temperature for concentrates. If you're to put concentrates in the oven, I would say 220 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the concentrate itself. Like if you're doing diamonds, it would take a little bit longer than something that was shatter, for instance. And with concentrates, when you're decarbing it, basically something to look for is it's going to melt down and bubble up. And then when those bubbles stop, as long as it's not smoking, it's kind of hit that point where it's fully activated, just a visual reference. And then with flowers, just to answer that part of it, 245 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how dry your cannabis is.
Okay, nice. Well, good to know. It's like I feel like it's like a trial and error for some people too, because like say for example, if people are in altitude or people on sea level, that could also differentiate too, plus or minus, too.
For
So
sure, yeah. The higher altitude you are, probably a couple more minutes in the oven.
something like that. So it's like, but hey, that's a good reference point to kind of give people a gauge and stuff like that. And so, okay, so my next question is going to be like flavor profiles. It's like many people find that grassy taste of cannabis off-putting. Which ingredients of fat sources like oils or butters do you work best to complement rather than mask the natural flavors of the plant?
Okay, so for me, I'm avoiding that whole thing. So like instead of having something to mask it or complement it, I kind of try to avoid the plant taste altogether. And by doing so, you can use things like concentrates for starting product. If you're in a legal state, concentrates are very easy to get. And those are not going to have flower taste because they've already been extracted from the flower. So the flower taste will be minimal. When you're making edibles with flowers, however, it is very hard to eliminate the flower taste. But I can give you 3 tips that will help out with that. Step one, don't grind up the weed. If you grind up the weed, you're going to create more flower taste in it no matter what. So what you want to do is break it into like little smaller than a golf ball size. That's the buds you want to be using when you're putting them in the oven. The second thing is when you're putting it in your fat, in your double boiler or whatever you're using, crock pot, whatever it is, at that time you want to not be mixing it around too crazy. You don't want to be breaking up the buds in the fat. They don't need that. They just need to be steeped, turn over, and make sure they're all fully covered for the right amount of time. Sometimes up to 3 hours, depending on the infusion that you're doing and the temperature you're using. And then lastly, when you're when you're when you're draining the product, right? So let's say you're making infused butter, for instance, or olive oil, and which are my 2 favorites. And you make the infusion, and let's say you have it in a cheesecloth, right? So a lot of times people want to squeeze the cheesecloth and just get it all out, as fast as possible. But really, the technique would be to let it sit and slowly drip for like 20 minutes until it stops, you know what I mean? And let it all naturally come out. And that's your first press, okay? And then you would take it and then squeeze it out into another bowl, the rest of it. And then that would be your second press. You don't want to mix the second press with the first press because the second press is going to have that flavor in it. So just keep that separate and use that for taster recipes and all that good stuff.
Oh, I would never think to do that. That's amazing. It's almost like it kind of like reminds me of like coffee, like the pour overs, when you're like Anne's
Yeah.
like, come on, coffee, come out. It's like the exact same thing. Almost just like
100%. Yeah. So by squeezing it is the same thing as mixing it real hard or grinding it. You're basically just crushing and ripping apart the trichromes and the plant material and causing the green plant taste to come through. And that's what a lot of people are getting that they're, quote unquote, not enjoying. Some people do enjoy it though, from what I've heard. For me personally, I'm with you.
yeah.
It's no go.
Well, let's see. It's like I was like I was asking a lot of people because before this interview I was like, hey guys, I'm interviewing a chef. He does cannabis infusion. What do you guys want to know? And they're like, oh, I love to know all these things. So these are all collective questions from a
Oh,
lot of
awesome.
different
I love
people.
that.
So yeah, so like this is my next question. This is going to be like the math portion. Is like as a chef, how do you ensure homogeneity, making sure the first bite is the exact same dose as the last bite?
So, I mean, that's a straight mixing situation pretty much. I mean, so it's about when you're putting your product in your edibles as well. So basically, this depends on what you're making. But
Yeah.
let's just say you're making a brownie mix, right? So the brownie mix, you want to mix it up as much as possible, right? That doesn't matter when you put it in. That's the main thing is as long as it's mixed properly, you should get homogeneity, like we're the word.
Yeah.
But let's say you're making something different, same thing, mac and cheese. You heat it up, you cook it all the way till it's done, and then I would throw some infused butter in right at the end and make sure I mix it really well. Spend 2 minutes mixing it for if you need to. But with that said, those are dishes that you're putting the infusion into. So with our infusions, we do a lot of table side infusions where we make an infused olive oil that we use a dropper bottle and we drop it onto people's dishes that are already completed. And the oil is strong. It's like 1 milligram per drop, basically, a little less. So some people are getting a couple drops. Some people are getting a drizzle, and some people are doing a squirt. We get some heavy dosers here in Colorado. No big deal. But With that said, I can dose each person specifically per course. So we'll do like a 7-course dinner, and maybe somebody wants to do like 5 milligrams on the first course, 3 milligrams. We get people who are very specific sometimes, and we can do that for each personal guest as they get their dinner experience. So that's how I do it for my dinners. And with that said, like, to answer that question, I'm not, we're not really worried about it then, because they have the plate in front of them. I'm putting the proper amount on that I know is gonna affect them, and basically give them the best experience. And sometimes they'll lick the bottom of the plate, and sometimes they'll eat it all, and sometimes they won't. It doesn't matter, because there's 3 to 7 courses, and by the end of it, they're going to get where they want to go. And we've never had a problem with it. I've been doing this for about 10 years. And as far as like when you're making recipes that have it in it, I would say mixing it well with cookies, especially. Let's say you make a batch of cookies or 60 cookies, you need to mix that dough properly, and that is where a lot of people make that mistake, especially with big batches. It's hard to do. Get your arm in there.
Yeah, I bet you're gonna be like so sore after and stuff like that. And then it's so
Yeah,
scary because I think I've heard some people they'll make like a brownie mix and they'll be like, I don't feel anything, and then they take it over here, and this is like where like the bigger chunk is at, and so it's like that's where all of it's at. And so like for what you're saying is like maybe mix it a little bit better, and then maybe have it more evenly flat or something if you were gonna cook like a brownie mix or something like that.
definitely mix it better. I mean, make sure if you're mixing butter in there, especially if it's not melted, if it's harder butter, like then you're going to have those issues. Me personally, I say make a highly infused olive oil, keep it in a bottle in your cupboard. Whenever you want to have an infused dish, like instead of making a batch of brownies that only you can eat, you know what I'm saying, or you and a couple of friends, you can make something that you make, and anytime you want to infuse it, you can just add it on there. That's the chef's go-to way to do it. You can always just squirt it in your mouth if you really want to be the boss.
You know? Hey, that's awesome. I love that because it's like, well, you know that you've worked for this industry for like 10 years, so you understand like there's some people that are a little bit scared to do it and stuff like that. And so how do you like coach people like about the delayed onset, and then how do you prevent the overconsumption and stuff like that?
For sure. And with that said, just one more thing to add to the last one real quick. Like I make as much as I do what I just said, I do make edibles for myself constantly, so I like recently I made some like trail treats, you know what I mean? Like little bars like with like grains and berries and nuts and chocolate and stuff like that. And then I infuse those with a highly infused butter, and I just mix it really well, and make it into the bars, and the butter is basically binding everything together inside of it. So that's how I'm getting my homogeneity on that one. And then I make gummies, which is easy to mix it. I use an immersion blender, which is basically something they stick inside and it mixes it all crazy. And I do that when I put so after the gummy mix is already made and it's warm on the stove, and I've already removed like the fat gelatin from the top. If anybody knows how to make out of gummies, it's for you. That's when I put my flavor in, my hash in there. What I do is I just decarb the hash in the oven. And I throw it right in my gummy mix like a crazy person, and then I put my flavoring in there and my coloring if I'm using coloring, and then I will put the immersion blender right in that sucker and mix it up like crazy, and then just pour them into my gummy molds. So that's how I do that.
Been coaching people for 10 years on this. How do you like coach someone who has like a delayed onset of the THC and then prevent overconsumption?
For sure. So, I mean, with that, a lot of people have the problems of not dosing their edibles properly, or maybe doing the wrong math to figure out like exactly like how strong something really is. And it's definitely a mistake a lot of people make, and an easy one. So I think that, and also another thing is people maybe not making their own edibles that are buying edibles, getting stuff that's labeled as something and it's not really what it is. I mean, even here in Colorado in dispensaries, I bought stuff that says it's 1,000 milligrams and it was not, so I think that's 1,000,000% a problem, stuff being mislabeled or people being misguided. And that definitely affects people. Some people are like, oh yeah, I've eaten 1,000 milligrams before because they ate that crappy edible. And then they go and they get one of my edibles, which says it's 100 milligrams, and they're, in outer space. So that's that can be something. So how do I prevent that? Basically, if I usually talk to people, I ask them like, do you smoke often? Do you edibles often? And then depending on those answers, I can debate whether or not, like if they're asking for a low, medium, or high dose, I can kind of debate what version of the low, medium, or high dose I'm going to give them. And that's how I kind of control it nowadays. But back in the day, like when I was making edibles for myself, like I was saying, when I make a tray of brownies, those were for me.
Yeah.
So anybody else who got a hold of them, they had a bad experience.
You're like, I was wonderful, but they were just like on
Yeah.
the planet. It was
I
like,
could tell some stories just about that. You know what I mean? People
yeah.
who dine too much on stuff like that. Because back in the day, I used to make stuff as strong as I could because that's just what I wanted to do at that time. But yeah, so how would I tell people to manage it? Basically the same way you're going to hear it over and over again. Start small, wait an hour, see how you're feeling. A lot of people have the problem of, I don't feel it yet, impatience, and then eating more and then overdosing on it. And, first few times you're eating edibles, your body's breaking it down in a different way and than you're used to. So like the cannabis experience can be overwhelming if you eat too much the first few times, or maybe if you had a long gap from cannabis use and you eat edibles, you definitely can have an experience that can be overwhelming to some.
Oh yeah, definitely. That sounds good. And it's like I know say for example, if someone took too much, what do you do to help them ground themselves? Or is it or most of the time are people just like good most of the time?
At my dinners, believe it or not, like people are good. Like if anything, so I always tell people this. Like most of the time, people are asking for more. They usually start at one point and they're turning it up by the time we go. People are like laughing to the street when I'm gone. Like you know what I mean. So the experiences are always high, and I think a lot of times you see people like seeing their friends having a good time, and they're like trying to like, oh shoot, give me more. I got to chase them. So we get a lot of that.
Yeah.
But if somebody does get too high, in that case, what I do recommend is CBD will definitely calm it down a little bit as it counteracts the psychoactive effects of THC, and also sugar, water, and sleep. Those are the three best things you can do.
No, yeah. That's like definitely. I think there's like people say like what is it? Like black peppercorn or lemon or something like that to kind of help with that as well. And then they have like these
I've heard that too.
yeah.
I haven't personally needed it to where I had to test it out, but if that works, awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. Whatever works best for people, I'd love to know too. And so, yeah, this is where right now we're gonna address the common misconception of the getting high stigma. So, like people think cannabis dining is just about getting stoned. How do you use your platform to show that it's actually about wellness, flavor, and community?
So, I mean, with that said, I mean, anybody who has a wine dinner could say it's about drinking. You know what I mean? We get a lot of people who have mixed cannabis and wine experiences. We get bachelorette parties where people maybe are, consuming one and the other. So, with that said, as far as stigma goes, we don't get a lot of people at our dinners that have too much stigma. I do get a lot of people who can't smoke because of their job and stuff like that, and that's why we do offer the tableside experiences. But as far as that goes, I don't think we experience it too much because we're a private chef service. So, but I have gotten out there and I've gotten on TV, Bravo Southern Charm. We did a private dinner for those guys and it was an infused dinner. And I think that kind of opened, that got out to millions of viewers and people saw like people having a cannabis experience and enjoying themselves and the fun side of it. You know what I mean? And it's not just about getting high. Like a lot of people, have sicknesses and wellnesses, and I've helped a lot of friends who have like cancer and stuff like that, just creating products for them. For instance, I just had a friend here recently who's suffering from cancer, and our job was to feed him. We had to get him to gain weight, and so edibles played a huge part in that while he was here.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like it's so crazy how the stigma behind it. It's like a realm of caring. We work, and so there's sometimes a stigma. People are very scared to try and stuff like that. And so like this is like a whole new entity of like, say for example, if one of our clients are just like excited to try a culinary experience, this would be a really cool opportunity, and especially if they're in the Denver area, to go check you out and stuff like that, and vice versa. If they were to like, say for example, go to a random other person that does cannabis infusions, what would be some key pointers to work out? Like what are some key things that they should be looking at? And what are some things that are like, oh, they shouldn't like if it's like this, should it be like, should they run for the hills or something like that? Like what's something that they should look for?
I definitely don't want to hate on anybody's craft, that's for sure. But um, as far as what to look for, definitely like experience in the game. How long have they been doing it? And also, are they avid cannabis users, or are they just somebody offering a cannabis experience? And then a lot of people who are looking for, maybe a lot of people that I get are looking for somebody who can actually get them high, because a lot of people who eat a lot of edibles and they go to different cannabis chefs, like some cannabis chefs only provide very low dose experiences and stuff like that, which is probably safer for some, for them especially. But you know what I mean? We provide an experience that's personalized for each guest and definitely on par with their user limits. So that's kind of fun. And then what to look for though, like how are they doing the infusions? And then like quality of food and the menu basically, is it something that you want? I would say other than that, check out the reviews. I don't really hire that many private chefs because I am one, so I don't really from a guest perspective, I would say that's what I would do.
Okay, no, awesome. Yeah, it's so cool to know because it's like sometimes, you're flying in blind and it's like, oh, what do I do? Ah, but like
Oh,
that's
for sure. Yeah, we get a lot of first time guests actually, Jennifer. A lot of people say this is like their first time getting a private chef, first time with a cannabis chef. Like
yeah,
definitely a lot of people say it's bucket list item. We get a lot of first time experiences with this all the time. And I always tell people like I've only hired a private chef once, so I totally understand. You know what I mean? It's definitely a unique experience, a lot of fun. And if you're in Denver, you should definitely try it.
yeah, no, that sounds like such a fun experience, especially like a bachelorette trip, uh, I don't know if a business trip unless the business is open to that, you know?
We get business trips. Businesses
So,
are open to it, but like I said, we do non-cannabis infused dinners too. We're actually also featured on Airbnb as well. I'm actually the highest rated chef on Airbnb in Denver, and also on Google in Denver. You know, cannabis or not. So that says something right there. We've won Best of Denver 2 different times in the Westward magazine, and I've been featured on Beat Bobby Flay and Chopped as well. And we get people of all ages. We just did a 70th birthday party where they were cannabis users.
wow, that's amazing. Yeah, no, like I think that's so cool. It's like I love your all around business of all this, and it's like this would be like my last one of the last questions that I have. So, what is the biggest mistake you see home cooks make when they try to infuse their own meals, and how can they fix it?
The biggest mistake I see with people making home infusions, and especially with meals, is heating up the cannabis too much. So, like you said earlier, like decarbing like they're worried about the temperature there, right? But then they go ahead and like make an infused oil, and you'll see this on shows like Bong Appétit, where they had exactly what I was telling you: chefs working with cannabis that weren't cannabis people working with food. So, with that said, you would see people like taking cannabis oil and frying in it. You know what I mean? So, totally, definitely not going to get high on that. And so things of that nature for sure. So basically, like trying to cook in your oil and stuff like that. The best thing you can do with your infusion is add it as a finishing touch. So my best recommendation is to use a neutral oil, a non-flavored oil, and add it like I was saying at the end. So let's say you're making guacamole, right? You make your guacamole, add the oil in, mix it up real well, boom, infused guacamole. You're making mac and cheese, like we said. You make your mac and cheese, get it to the finishing point, take it off the heat, add the oil in, mix it up real well, boom, infuse mac and cheese. Don't overthink it. It's not that hard. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you're baking, obviously you have to put in the recipe beforehand. But if you're not, like, so when you're baking, I'll just give you two more things. When you're baking, you're cooking with ambient temperatures, right? So the heat is coming from all over. And even though it says 300 degrees, your product in the oven isn't going to reach 300 degrees unless you leave it in there for a long time. So when you're making brownies and stuff like that, it's never getting hot enough to affect the cannabis product like that. When you're cooking on the stove, however, using direct heat, and your pan is getting that hot. So when you put your cannabis product directly, like even cannabis butter, directly on the pan, if that cannabis butter is browning, you're probably losing a lot of cannabis product, right? So I'll leave it at that unless you have more on it and you want to hear more. I could talk forever.
No, yeah, no, it's so cool. Like I love it. It's so cool. It's like quick recap is like when you cook it, have it at the end, especially for like mac and cheese, guacamole.
Savory food.
Mhm. But like baking is a whole different entity. It's like it's like you have to perfect that craft. But it was so cool. You gave us tips and tricks and all this cool stuff that people can, take with a grain of salt. Like, disclaimer form, do with it as you please. But this is just informational, fun video, stuff like that. And then just to kind of reference back a little bit to our organization at Realm of Caring. Here at Realm of Caring, we do a lot of like research and data. Right now, we're doing the National Cannabis Study. What are your thoughts on the importance of like data and research right now? Like with the National Cannabis Study, we're doing research about first-time cannabis users to kind of help with the information of that. I just wanted to know like what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to get like a pool of people and get the information like that so we can get it out there. And like you said, you know, the stigma, basically, that's definitely going to help fight the stigma. You know, the more information that's out there, the more people know and the more comfortable they are, because there's a lot of people who live in states where cannabis isn't popular, and you know they think really negatively of it, you know, even a couple hours away from a state that isn't. So you see that a lot, you know, when traveling and things of that nature, especially. So I think that's great, like, you know, just getting more knowledge out there. And just thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think yes, this is how like I feel like our two companies align well, where it's like, you kind of do like the real work on the foundation of like with the people infusion, and we're doing the background end of like the research, the data. Okay.
You're gonna come back to me with the peppers, the pepper data.
Yeah, yeah. I'll come back to you with like the pepper data and be like, okay, we found out this X, Y, and Z about this. But other than that, like, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. Even though it's very quickly, I really do appreciate it. And I can't wait to anything else you want to mention before we go.
Um, Check us out, Dine with Royalty, #1 cannabis chef in Colorado, serving infused dining experiences and also providing cooking classes for people who want to learn more. There's information on my website if you will visit us at Chef Royalty or dinewithroyalty.com. And the royalty is spelled Roilty. The oil's inside, just like the food. If you visit us there, you can find recipes where you can find out different techniques that we would use to infuse different recipes where the cannabis is inside the recipe, like we were talking about. So we have tons of those on there that are fun, from homemade chicken nuggets and more. And then other than that, there's information on infusions as well. We have a video on there that you can purchase, which will give you high definition infusion techniques on concentrates and edibles, and also free information to get the word out there on cannabis infusions as well. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you just as much, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.